Okay, I'm recording now. So welcome to you guys. We got 40 minutes to discuss the choosing the cheerleading squad case 6.16. I will apologize and say I'm out of town and I was scrambling to find a good wireless connection. I'm on a fishing trip and my cabin didn't have reliable wireless, so I found like this random little gift shop thing I'm in here. So I hope that this works out. So I hope everybody's doing well. And you had a chance to read that. We're just going to go through the document that Dr. Neal provided us with. I think that's the best thing to do. Let's start off with the problems. And I will start with the problem, and then let's go round robin. I'll say your name so everybody has a chance to talk until we run out of problems, and then we'll go on to the next thing. How about that? So
sounds good.
Yeah, we were saying before, me and Matthew, that this one wasn't as clear cut as the last one, so it was kind of interesting to read and it's a little bit longer and in depth. But and I'm not sure if I'm quite right with some of the problems and what I decided to do. So I'm interested to see what you guys have to say. One of the problems that I wrote down is just the most obvious one, is that the parents of the black students who didn't make the team and the actual students who didn't make the team are angry. It even said that some of the girls stormed out. So that's one of the problems. Mr. Locklear, Aaron, what's one of the problems you wrote down?
I wrote down that 3 of the 5 black judges showed up to be a judge, so 2 were a no-show.
Oh, is that right? I didn't catch that part. Okay, cool. Matthew, what'd you write down for a problem?
Let's see. Well, I guess my first thing is just the coach that's coached like 17 years. And this is the first time this has happened, and I think the principal not backing the coach was a big problem.
That's a big time problem, yeah, for sure. Shanetta?
I wrote down that I don't think the panel of judges, which goes along with what Aaron says, doesn't represent the ethnicities in the school.
And do
you know how they gave the breakdown of each? I think just from the outside looking in, it's harder to complain if you kind of cover all your bases. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If the panel represents, the school, then it gives people less to fuss about, I guess.
So you feel that the panel of judges should have been equitable to exactly what the diversity of the school is? Is that what you're...
As much as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jessica, what's one thing that you wrote down?
I wrote down that the process wasn't known to the parents and students and everybody involved. It seemed like every time she came to somebody with a problem, they had to understand her process and score sheet before they could address it.
That's a big time problem. I wrote that down later on as one of the solutions as well, as if they make that clear from the beginning. I was looking at a court case, it's called Spring Branch versus Stamos from 1984. Courts upheld the no pass, no play statute, where if kids aren't passing classes, then it's okay that they don't make a team based off of that. And I also just was doing some research. There's a lot of stuff about gender equality, but not as much about racial equality as far as when you make a team is concerned. But it does say that a lot of this stuff is left up to the fundamental right to participate in extracurricular activities is left up to the state or the individual school. So it seems to be some arbitrary judgment, but I think you're right, Jessica, where they sort of need to have that set in stone. I wrote down one problem is that they don't have rules for equitable racial numbers. They're not the same for all the different teams. He mentioned that basketball teams, or I guess the coach feels like the basketball team doesn't have some sort of equality limit, and so why should you? And so that's one of the ones I wrote down. Does anybody else have something to add as far as the problems are concerned?
I thought it was a problem that the judges were allowed to tally up their own points. She felt like they could be trusted, so maybe that needed to be changed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
One big thing I thought about was it said having the current cheerleaders and having just random students there also.
Yeah.
And if I'm a coach, then I want to make sure I have adults who have no kind of bias or anything like that
Yeah.
to be able to pick those athletes.
Yeah.
That's true, because that would have gave the parents would not have that as an excuse to use to say that there was a favoritism of those current cheerleaders helping the whites more.
Right.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have had the argument.
Yeah.
I was wondering if Hispanics and Asians are even being brought into the question. Because you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I didn't hear that anybody talk about them, and 7% of the school population is Hispanic, and 1% was Asian, but it seems to me that it's not about that at all. So that's one thing I wrote down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. They didn't mention out of the 10 how many were Asian or Hispanic.
Yeah.
We just know that.
I think also a big question is what is the purpose of the cheerleading team? You know, is it supposed to be a representation of your school? Is it a competing team? Is it something that you're going to these events to win?
Right.
Or is it just basically going to cheer on somebody, which lends itself to be a little bit more equitable when it comes to representation of the school?
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. Yeah.
Jessica, were you about to say something earlier?
I was just going to say, as a problem, another problem I wrote down was that the assistant superintendent,
Yeah.
is involved and is taking those parents' concerns in a private meeting where the cheerleading coach wasn't necessarily invited, and maybe not even allowed. So I thought that was a problem.
Do you think that it's appropriate to factor in a citizenship rating from the counselors? Like, that's part of the rubric. I mean, like Matthew, you said you've coached for 20 years. I've been coaching the baseball team at my school for the last 5 years, and I do have a rating system, but I don't think I've ever gone to the point of like taking consideration. Well, I mean, I guess I have actually. Like, that kid's a bad kid. I don't want him on the team, but is it the right thing to do to take a counselor's rating system and put it on the rubric? Like, you know what I mean? Like, they said citizenship rating, which to me means like how responsible are they? And that seems kind of arbitrary. Did you guys catch in on that? And does that seem like the right thing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a little too subjective.
Yeah.
It's thinking be less subjective as possible. It's really objective.
Right.
I think I was just thinking that, I mean, if girls knew that was the case in junior high going into high school,
Yeah.
then you would hopefully might be able to use that to persuade them to, come to school, manage their behavior a little bit better. But the case that you brought up, Drew, was a lot of times when those attendance issues arose, those are affecting more, to minority students. So,
Right. Definitely.
Is that something that's going to hold them back? It's almost like a catch-22.
And as long as the school is adhering to Section 504, Student Disability Act of 1973 and 1990, then everything's good. As long as they have things set in stone, they can go by their own, from what I understand, and it was interesting to me to do the research, but as long they can create their own school policy, or they can go by like their own county policy. It doesn't have to be something, and usually if it does go to the courts, then it'll get upheld that those students, it's okay that they were all the same. They didn't have any students of color on there, as long as they adhered to the standards.
Mm-hmm.
So one more problem I wrote down that's just obvious is that the cheerleading squad is confused, angry. The actual kids on there, there's high tension, they wrote, among the captains. So, I mean, that's like one of the last things. What were you about to say, Matthew?
Well, and
Sorry.
You go ahead, Jessica.
I was going to say, another obvious problem is that the cheerleading coach feels attacked and alienated by the whole thing, and she feels like her character's called into question, which is You know,
By
tough.
the principal and the assistant superintendent, right? Like she's not getting anybody back in there, and I personally think that she's sort of doing more the right thing than they are. I don't know if I'm wrong in that.
Oh yeah.
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 No.
Okay.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, it is, as an administrator, I think you're just worried about bad publicity is all you're worried about. You
Mhm.
know, if
Yeah.
it hasn't happened for 17 years, this is the first year. It's a big race issue to him. My big questions. I don't know if you and just may not have caught it, but when it talked about him arriving 3 years earlier, did you guys read about that? It said that he had noticed there had been a. Let's see if I can see it.
Oh yeah, 3 years early, he had noticed a big problem with the number of students of color on the cheerleading team, or specifically black students.
Right, and that next said that next sentence. I didn't know if he had talked to her about that, or he was just saying it in the moment that you might want to try to go out and recruit more black students, or if he had said that then to her, or was it now that he was talking about?
I was taking it as him going to recruit black judges,
Yeah,
Okay.
judges. Go down the halls and grab the judges.
even if it just meant pulling them out randomly. That's what he was saying.
Yeah.
But either way, I think the point that you're saying is the same. Like it's the same for both points.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it was in that moment. It wasn't to me when I read it. It didn't seem like a thing he had said to her 3 years ago when he first.
Right.
It was
Yeah.
a thing that he was saying in the
Well, he
moment.
was just saying he had noticed it but never said anything about it. I think that would be a problem in itself. Is that if he noticed it, why didn't he, go ahead and address it then, rather than waiting?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think the principal and the superintendent, they're scared that it could be a political issue and a blow up, and they're just trying to avoid it. I think it has a lot of political implications to it, or it could.
So I think we sort of covered
Here-
the. I'm sorry. Go ahead, dude. This is awkward sometimes.
I just kind of said he had told Ronna that she should make more of an effort to recruit black girls. He had looked at the data from the triathlon side of the 2 black girls who had ranked the highest about the alternatives. So yeah, that's what I was talking about going and recruiting more of those actual students to recruit to actually come out. But I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're right. And then he says the bottom line is that we have to do something to change the results. Like this dude wants there to be,
Right.
he said the bottom line, we have got to change the results. And he forced her to now have 12 rather than 10, which of course makes it more difficult on the coach because now you have to handle a couple more students and then they might not even deserve it. I'm trying to think if anything she did is wrong. And I think there were a couple of things in relation to like that citizenship thing and others, but mostly I think you're right, it's him. So I think we covered all the bases of the problems, and then where it gets interesting is what do you do to fix it. So the next thing that you talk about is the central problem. So I guess let's all go around and say what we think the absolute central problem is. I wrote that the central problem is that the school is not adhering to a central policy for all athletic programs. So courts are not required to uphold racial equality for all teams, and as long as their judgment is fair, but they don't have that. It's once again that word I kind of used last time, that transparency that should be there from the beginning. I would almost recommend getting a waiver signed by the parents and kids before they, try out. So if you would like to add on to that or say your own, then go ahead. For the central problem.
Yeah, I said the process isn't known by students and parents. I mean, she said that before when parents had called her, when some of the parents had called her and she had showed them the score sheet,
Yeah.
they were fine.
Right.
And so it was only a problem that they didn't know.
Yeah.
That, like what the score was or what the process was for choosing the kids. So I said that was the problem.
Yeah, I agree. That's the main problem that I think too is the process, and that it should be like a rubric,
Right.
and it should be known from like girls rising from like 9th grade, they should already know Matthew was saying, it shouldn't be anything that's that should be common knowledge. Even like in elementary school, what you have to do to be in the squad in junior high.
Yeah.
I think that would avoid a lot of the problems.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Aaron.
you can go ahead, Mr. Ramsey.
I was just saying that I think that the whole way of choosing them should be known, like you guys said, and also, I guess all the variables that can come into play, like, for instance, why do we choose 10? You know, why is that an arbitrary number, or is there a reason for it? Do we have 10 uniforms? Do we have not enough money to buy a new uniform? Is there in case of something happens where there are such close scores, can we, you know, add a couple or you know, as many as we need to? I think all those things are should be put in place, especially when, you know, if this guy was the assistant principal 3 years ago and now he's a principal, then it's probably a good idea when the new principal comes in is, are we on the same page about each sport that we coach? And knowing that, you know, this is my plan as a cheerleading coach. You know, is there anything that, you know, that you feel like you need to, you know, put into the conversation that you like? Or I know that takes away a lot of the personal, you know, your personal choice in things, but, you know, like I said, from experience, it's always better to know what somebody wants the expectations are, so then I can make my expectations and put all my variables in place so things like this happen less frequently.
Mm-hmm.
All right, guys. It says, once you've identified the problem, what are some common practices, tried and true techniques and strategies to overcome the problem? I'll start and then let's go around. We have 10 minutes left. I think this is the one that I had a hard time. I guess I'm putting myself in an administrator's role here, and I'm having a hard time figuring out what to do, because to me it seems like you should let it ride and leave it as is, but implement a policy effective immediately, which sort of details the specific requirements for making that team, and that needs to happen from now on. But I don't know if you should necessarily like change anything right now. What do you guys think?
I said that adding the girls to the team is maybe kind but not necessary. Adding the two black girls to the team maybe a kind thing. It's just not necessary, sure. But having the score sheets, I mean, Rhonda has the score sheets, so making those public to the parents right away and say, look, this is what happened. These are the people the top 10 who scored.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yep.
And that's just if we want to amend this process or change this process, you know, invite those parents to be a part of a meeting to solve it for the next year. But I don't feel like the teacher did anything wrong to warrant this kind of sort of attack. I did find a law, and I don't have it in front of me, but the laws about harming the teacher's reputation, because she did mention in the end that she was worried that resigning from the cheerleading coach's position would make it look like that racism was a part of the problem, and that she had maybe committed some, you know, indecency in that way, and so she couldn't, so she felt trapped by that. And so the assistant superintendent and the principal have a problem there where they've put her reputation on the line in this by not backing her. And so that's one of the things they have to like avoid at all costs.
Yeah, my immediate plan would be to meet with the principal again, and you know, if he's going to say you need 12, I'm the kind of person to say, okay, we'll do 12. That's fine. But the principal needs to be able to field the questions rather than me, because if he's going to override what I say, my judgment, then he needs to be willing to take that responsibility and saying, all right, this is what we're doing, and you know, it's his decision. He's the principal of the school. He makes the final decision. So, you know, it's nothing that I can do.
That's right. That's a good point.
Yeah. Yeah. I think what I would do first is, if I'm the principal, I want a meeting with the cheerleading coach, with the parents that are upset and the kids, and just discuss. Sometimes people want to vent, and I think they need to be heard. And then show them the tally sheet, explain the process to them, tell them this year we're going to have 12, appease them, 12 cheerleaders on this team, but starting next year, this is what it's going to be. And I think that'll kind of extinguish the fire. Hopefully. That's what I would do.
I was thinking along the same lines, Shanetta, but the principal actually told the coach, don't try to explain how or why the action is being taken, and I kind of disagree with that.
I do too.
Right.
That's right, Aaron. That's a good point. I forget about that part, but that struck me as the wrong thing when you said that. Do you think that she should seek legal advice from this? Because what do you do when you got the assistant superintendent and your own principal, and you're feeling like your reputation, Jessica, like you were kind of going down that road? Do you think this is something where she needs to maybe call or email somebody that's higher up than that?
Absolutely, I would. I mean, if the assistant superintendent's going to have a meeting with parents and field their questions about maybe her prejudice and her racism, and her not be invited to the meeting, that's putting her reputation on the line. I would absolutely call someone. I'm
glad that, because I wrote that down and I was thinking, like, that seems a little extreme. I would never want to do that. But, I mean, in this situation, I'm thinking, like, well, I mean, God knows you kind of got to do something here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, if she were to leave under those circumstances, she wouldn't be able to necessarily get a job in the area.
Yeah, right. Especially not coach.
With that reputation.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this one more thing. Do you think that parents should be allowed to watch the tryouts? Like, would that help? I know like Matthew, you said you coached and I coached baseball. I hate it when the parents come, but I never made a policy where they can't watch. Do you guys? I mean, if they watch, it's kind of going to be like, I mean, I guess you always think your kid's awesome, but and allow them to.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Would that help?
Yeah.
Might help.
Honestly, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jessica.
No, you go ahead.
It's always for me. It's been more of a distraction than anything else.
Yeah.
When you have a lot of parents in there, it's almost like a game where they're, and I think you said that middle school is the first year that everybody doesn't get to play, so parents have a hard time adjusting to that, and most of the time their child has been the star of the team, and once they get there, they go based on memory instead of the actual things that happen. So they would say, like, well, he had a bad tryout. Could he come back, next week, a few days, or that wasn't his best game, or he was playing against someone a little bit better than him, because they're full of excuses when it comes to that. So having close tryouts it's always been a lot easier, especially because a lot of times you end up, your kids go to camp over the years and you develop friendships. Well, not friendships, just acquaintances with the parents, and it makes it a lot more difficult when you do have to cut those kids in front of them.
Yeah, but I think in this case, with a rubric, there is no subjectivity to it. You know what I mean? And so a parent sitting in the stands is really just watching their kid, watching a panel of judges mark them on a rubric, and seeing score sheet at the end of the day. It's not as subjective as the head coach and assistant coach standing there just picking kids. You know what I mean? So in this case, I feel like there's really no reason to keep the parents out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I really thought the coach did a nice job. Sorry, go ahead, Aaron.
I actually like the idea of not getting the parents involved. I can imagine that they may start cheering, hooping, and hollering, and maybe become a distraction. But maybe if they were invited, they would be kind of asked to, quote unquote, remain silent. But I know that'd be difficult. But I kind of like the closed door policy.
So I think we kind of covered. We got 2 minutes left, as you guys can see. But I think we kind of covered what we would all do immediately. It varied from seeking legal advice to having another meeting with the principal to, a lot of other different things. But so long term, I think we were kind of in agreement too, that you just need to have a more strict policy for all sports about what you're going to do. So I think that kind of sums it up.
Mm-hmm.
And I was also thinking about the citizenship. I had included that also in my long term. Maybe they need to reconsider using grades as a basis. It didn't mention more about the citizenship versus the grades as a criteria.
And I wondered, it didn't say. I wondered, like, how is it weighted? Like,
Right.
is citizenship weighted different than tardiness? How are you weighting each
Yeah, that's a
of
good
the
point.
criteria?
It just needs to all be set in stone. I mean, that's, the bottom line. And it needs to be displayed to the parents and the student athletes. And then everything's sort of solved from the beginning, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, y'all. We got about less than a minute. I got a lake over there. I'm about to go get my bathing suit on and hop in there and get a little fishing done. But it was nice seeing you guys. And Jessica, I guess I'll see y'all next week for our peer reviews. And then everybody else, I think we only have 1 or 2 more of these things. And I'll send out an email about that eventually.
All right. Sounds good.
Okay.
Great.
Enjoy yourself and good luck on your OMA AB. I'll send
All right,
that
see you guys.
as soon as I can. Okay. Take care, y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.